instructor in Switzerland, and I'm also an alpine mountain guide for horses.
One thing, Peter, I'm not sure if you do start the presentation, will it show? It's showing us your whole screen, but that's fine if that's the only way it works.
Well, can you see the screen changing?
We can see the screen changing, yes, and we see the whole program itself, but that's fine if that's how it works. That's fine.
Well, that'd be great if that would work that way.
Okay.
So yeah, and there's a couple of things that I learned, and one is that the limitation of your horse begins there where your own imagination ends. That means that your horse is only permitted to do what you can imagine your horse can do. Yet your horse is so much more capable than you think. And that's one of the things that I learned. We don't trust our horses to the extent that they are capable of. And that has many different reasons, but basically we can trust our horses to handle themselves in the mountains in ways that we cannot imagine. Now, let's not go too deep into that. I have another issue, and that is I'm traveling ultra light, and I'm always riding the local horse. That also means that I can do more miles a day because my horse is not weighed down with a lot of weight. And riding the local horse means that I'm sure that I take a horse into an area that he knows best. Traveling in Jasper or Banff National Park with Mustangs has been an incredible journey because these horses know exactly how to deal with the situations that they find themselves in those areas. It's the same in the Caucasus Mountains or in Mongolia. You want to ride the local horse there because it knows what it is facing in the nature that it's meeting there. Well, at the very beginning, I had a friend who called me asking me if I wanted to ride with him from Hungary back to Germany. And so we flew out there and we started our ride from Budapest in Hungary to Offenburg in Germany at the French border. It was like a 900-mile ride, 5 weeks along the Danube. And it caused us to experience a different type of culture, different type of situations, and also got us to meet a lot of different people. And the reason that the people are excited about seeing us are actually the horses. They came to see the horses. And that's when the people open up their hearts to you because they see how you're dealing with your horse. After this ride, we had actually planned to go to another ride from Budapest down to the Black Sea, but realizing that the weather is really hot down there, we decided to do a different trip. But unfortunately, one of the horses that my friend used for the rides died through a poisoning situation. So we had to cancel that ride. And instead of that, I went to see some friends on the other side of Switzerland. And here you can see how big Switzerland is. It's only 210 miles across the entire state, the entire country. But it took me only 5 days to get down there because we covered a lot of ground every day. This is Flash. This is the horse that I learned how to ride on. He is a Arabian. And we started at my home. This is my house in Switzerland. And we took about 30 miles, 40 miles a day, 5,000 feet of elevation every day, across the Swiss Alps down to the very southern end of Switzerland. I had to learn to trust my horse because it was summer, but we had snow. And it was kind of scary first solo ride for me to go down there. So next year we decided to get some more experienced people. And with them, we rode through Germany, the northern part of Germany, from Bielefeld up to the Northern Ocean. And the reason for that was because people want to go either right to the ocean or across the Alps in Europe. We wanted to see how our horses were doing in the ocean. And it was my experience that Flash, my horse, was scared of every wave that hit the shore. And also he was very suspicious of the way that the water tasted. He tried it a couple of times, but he spewed the water out every time he did some intake. The year after that, most of the time I spent riding in Switzerland, and the preferred area I'm riding is Graubünden. It has a lot of really nice mountains that are glacier molded mountains, and so therefore riding there is real simple. You don't have very difficult passages. I took friends there in those areas riding, and we had a lot of different situations because the time we can ride starts basically in April, May, and it ends in November. So we had different conditions to meet, and also trying to find new routes and find new places to go. We experienced a lot of fun rides up there. People came along more and more till we ended up actually doing trail rides for paying guests. And this is what I'm doing today. In the following year, we decided to do one of the famous long rides that is possible. In Europe, we have a couple of dozen of long distance hiking trails. And this is one of them. It's from Munich down to Venice, which is from the very top of your screen to the very bottom of the screen. And then we decided to ride back across the Italian Alps to Switzerland. Since there's about 3,000 years of tourism or crossing the mountains, we have mountain houses and restaurants all over the place. And some of them are less comfortable, and some of them are better than this one. But there is always great grazing for the horses because we have a lot more water than you do here in Colorado. Europe is much tighter, much less space between the different places. So we have like 2 hours to cross a summit, and then we go down to the valley, and we can pass 2 or 3 summits in one single day. And compared to Jasper, where I just returned from, where it took us 2 days to ride up to a summit and 2 days to go down. So you see a lot more different vistas in a very much shorter time. Riding in the Swiss Alps is really interesting in as much as you have a lot of different options to cross the mountains because there is so many different trails you can choose from. But you also find yourself in very civilized areas where the farmers produce their cheese in the mountains, and you have beautiful vistas every so often whenever you cross into another valley. All the rivers are pretty tamed, so that there is not wild rivers like we have in Canada or United States. The lakes are very pretty contained also, but we have a whole lot more trails and a whole lot more possibility to get around. When we ride up into the mountains, we try to be traveling as light as possible. So that means we have about 50 pounds of weight on our horses. That includes the food, that includes tents, that includes fencing for the horses, first aid, farrier work, and so on. Also, we found out where not to go, and this is one of the places where they didn't like us being with the horses, so we had to leave them behind and take the train into Venice. Next big venture was another one of those long distance hiking trails. It was the trail that started down in Nizza at the Mediterranean, and we rode all the way up to Switzerland. It was another 500-mile ride, and it took us about 4 weeks to cover this distance. This is Pat with my horse Flash, and we ride bitless. And she has been with me for the first 15 years of my adventures. This is Cholt in the background with Amy, his Haflinger horse, and he was the one that got me into trail riding. The horses learn to do with whatever they are, find themselves in the situation, and we start very early in the morning to get about half of the distance that we want to do, 15 to 20 miles per day before we hit lunchtime. Towards 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we start looking for a place where we can camp. And so in most of the cases, we stay in areas where we have good feed for the horses. And that means in Europe, you have to ask the farmer if you can stay in one of his fields. To avoid the situation of a lot of fences and ride like we used to be able to ride here in the United States when cowboys were still driving the cattle across the countryside, we flew to Romania and started riding in the Carpath Mountains. And we started in Cluj and ended up near Vetradoren. And it was a ride across a beautiful, totally free countryside. No fences, no roads. The only thing that would cause you to have to think where you want to go are some rivers that we needed to cross. But it was very nice riding without having the obstacle of fences or roads. We met a lot of interesting people. There is sheep and pigs together with this man in the mountainside. And we found also a lot of different kinds of pack horses on the trail. This is the Făgăraș mountain. This is the highest mountain in Romania. And we rode along its summit the longest time as that was possible. This is a traffic jam in one of the villages. There is no paved roads. After the creek, the road goes in all directions, and everybody rides as the arrow flies because there is no roads going anywhere. This is a classic village in Romania. Every family lives in one of these little houses, and the houses are just connected with little pathways. So the next trip we did was in Switzerland. We wanted to cross the Alps on the north and on the south side. So we took our horses, and it was end of August when we started. So the conditions were kind of cold, but it turned out to be a real nice trail with some difficulties. Here we learned how the horses can help us climb up a steep mountainside. And we also had to learn to trust them to find their way through difficult terrain. The beauty of Switzerland is comparable to the beauty of the national parks here, except that we have a lot of civilization. And so you have different vistas and different views that you can find. We also had to let our horses learn to do difficult passages. And going up mountainsides like this, we changed from metal shoes to composite from the maker in Germany, Duplo. And that opened up totally new vistas. We were riding here with those composite plastic shoes on a steel pipe across a valley because it was a nice shortcut, and you could do that with the plastic compounds. Traveling with friends, you have the trail signs here meant that all kinds of different people had to learn how to do mountains with their horses, but we found out that it only takes a couple of days for horses to get adjusted to trail riding in mountain areas. This is the picture of a typical Swiss mountainside. This is a village in the background there, and this is what Switzerland looks like if you're not looking at the Matterhorn or chocolate bars. We had at the beginning difficulty trying to find out what we were going to feed our horses on the trail, but we found out that the mountain grass that we have available is plenty for them. They don't need any extra feed. But even in the level of glaciers, the grass that is not very tall there is very nutritious, so that we don't have problems keeping the weight on our horses. Horses had to learn to face difficulties, and we had to look at bridges that were not exactly the way that we would foresee bridges, but that's what it looks like in some trails over in Europe. We had done this trail, and the following year we decided to go down to Spain and ride on the Pyrenees Mountains, and it's called the Haute Route Pyrénées, and it's a 450-mile trail, and it's 154,000 feet of elevation in total, and it took us 6 weeks, and that was one of the hardest trails that we did. At this time, my horse was 22 years old, and it was the last trail that he had to do with distance over more than 1,000 kilometers. We started at the Atlantic, and this is called Basque country, and this is how they write their village names, and the language is totally unspeakable. It's called Basque. It's not Spanish. It's a totally independent language. And so it was very interesting that we could not order any food, but we were taken into the kitchen of the restaurant so we could pick the food out of the pots that he opened up for us. We didn't know what we were getting into when we decided to go riding there. But the biggest problem we had was just the feed for the horses. There is free living ponies there, and they graze everything down to golf court quarter quality. And the trails that we faced were very difficult indeed. We had a lot of situations where we just decided to walk and guide our horses because the trails were so difficult to manage. Also, we had the chance to help another farmer to take care of a cow that had hurt itself. And we had opportunities to train our horses in a totally new terrain and area, because this kind of trail riding was, even for us, it was new. The trails were not very dangerous in as much, but the trails were very steep and lots of rock climbing and lots of stuff that you had to go across that we weren't used to. So Flash learned how to surmount mountains, and he's climbing down a sheer cliff here because I'm down on this road with another horse, and he decided that he was not going to stay up there where I told him to wait. He climbed down all by himself, and I just heard rocks tumbling down, took the camera out, and shot this picture. But when you see the sea view, you know that all the hardship and all the difficulties are worthwhile, and you keep on going just from one beautiful place to the next. We also saw some vultures on a mountainside, and here we are in a mountainside that has been dug out 400 years ago by King Louis XIV. And the purpose of this was to bring trees down from the mountain so that he could have masts built for his ships that he wanted to have completed his fleet with. When we travel across this beautiful countryside, we're aware of the situation that the Spanish people think that this is totally normal. And we had to find ourselves crossing the border from France to Spain a lot because of the grazing situation. So sometimes the grass was better over on the French side, and sometimes the grass was better on the Spanish side. We came across a lot of different situations with feeding the horses, but we hardly ever run into any people at this elevation. We had to let the horses find their ways in many, many ways, and that meant that we just had to let them go. They walk up these rock fields by themselves, finding a trail. They wait for us on top of the mountain. And all they're doing is looking down and then telling us, we know exactly what's happening. We're going to go down the other side and then climb up the opposite wall on the other mountainside again. The horses are now well fit for this area, and the difficulty is getting more and more. It's getting more difficult all the time. We have here rocks that are the size of little fridges, and we have to get across, and it's a balancing act because they don't stay put. They wiggle and they move as the horses step on them. And it's kind of critical, but we manage, we get across, and we have to climb down sheer cliffs to get down to the Mediterranean lake where we are heading to. And this was like the most difficult ride that I've done so far to this point. But the horses managed well, and they found a way to solve their problems we got them into all the time. So finally, we reached the Mediterranean, and from there, we went back home to start another adventure, and that was flying over to Mongolia. Mongolia, we rode all the way in the northwestern part of Mongolia along the Russian and Chinese border. And Mongolia is definitely a different type of country. The 10-year-old boy is bringing us his horses, while the grandfather is sitting on the only chair in the yurt, watching over the food that we are being given as guests of the house. You're welcome at any yurt you approach, and the way you do it is you're asking the people to call their dogs inside, which means that you want to stay for the night and you want to be fed, and you will be leaving within 12 hours. And because there is no hotels, there is no motels, this is the way that you travel in all of Mongolia. The kids have an important job. They do taking care of all the goats and the sheep. And in the background of this picture, you can see a city. The city is 50 miles away from where I stood taking these pictures. And that's how clear the air is over there. The sky in nighttime is incredible to watch. This is how they shoe horses in Mongolia. They put the horses on the ground, tie together their feet, and then they put the irons on. The irons are handmade, and so are the nails. And they hold on for about 10 days, and then you have to reshoe them because the nails are not very good. We ride in endless areas without any fences, without any hindrance. The only thing that stops you at some time is a big river, lake, or a mountain range. But the hospitality of the people is just absolutely incredible. You just walk up to a yurt and they will feed you. They will slaughter a sheep for you. They will take care of you. And it doesn't matter whether it's a single woman whose husband has died or a family man, you're always invited to have dinner with them, and they prepare one of their 5 festival meals every time you're there as a guest. Here we're in the mountains, in the Altai Mountains, and you can see we're dressed pretty well, because at the daytime it can reach 30 or 100 degrees Fahrenheit, but at night it drops below freezing every time. So you have a campsite here where we let the horses graze for the night. We ride on through different valleys up to the Altai Mountains, and every yurt you come to during the day will offer you tea to drink, and that's the only time that the woman of the house takes a break to sit down, serving you your tea. The horses in that area, they're like 13 hands, 14 hands high, tall horses. They roam free in the valley. There is nothing that contains them. They just stay together as a herd, and they are only driven away from the yurts by wolves that may be coming into the valley. And then you have a big stampede of all the animals that run up the valley or down. These are the highest mountains in the Altai Mountains of Mongolia. And this is a big glacier area there. It's beautiful, beautiful vista. It's great, but very cold up there. And when we left this area, we came into some more civilized parts with actual bridges across rivers that are for cars. You can see there is no road going from this bridge, but actually people driving across the countryside and then use this bridge to cross over the river. These 2 boys that we see here, the older 2, they took off on their camels to fetch us some trout. They came back within an hour with 13 hand-caught trouts. And the boy on the right-hand side, he's making arak. Arak is a horse milk that is, after 3 hours of stamping or mixing it, it will turn alcoholic, and it's like a beverage. It's like a drink that they enjoy very much in Mongolia. There is yak animals. They're like as old as the bisons are in the United States, but they're very hardy animals that don't need any supervision. They can survive minus temperatures of extreme cold of minus 50 degrees Celsius in wintertime, and they have no problems with 30, 35, with 100 degrees Fahrenheit in summertime. Camels and horses roam free, and like the horses up at the mountain area, they have a situation where one horse is tied to the teepee, and if they need one of the other horses or one of the camels, the man jumps on his horse, rides off, driving the animals back to the yurt, where they also are milked every night anyway, while the babies are being tied on the ground in the area of the yurt. Water freezes every night, so you have to either go to a lake or wait till the water thaws out. And for the first 12 days, we didn't wash a lot because the water was so cold that you just sprinkled your face and washed your hands. For the rest of the time, you just let it slip by. We came to one of the provincial capitals, and there is a hospital here, but the hospital is only for women giving birth. If you break your arm, you got to travel 4,000 Ks, like 3,000, 2,500, 3,000 miles back to Ulaanbaatar to get your arm put into a, to get your arm fixed up in the hospital. These people are Tuva people. They're actually from Siberia, and they are moving their entire yurt from one place to another. We followed them. There is like 300 sheep, 400 sheep. There is cows and horses, and these 2 camels that carry the yurt on their back to a place 60 kilometers, 40 miles away from where we met them. This little boy here will take care of his father's sheep about 40 Ks, about 30 miles away from where his father's camp and yurt is. And every other day, his 2-year-old brother will come by and bring him some food. He stays there all by himself, watching out for his sheep and goats. And there is bears. No, sorry, there's no bears. There is wolves, and there is tigers, and there is cougars in the area that he has to defend with his little BB gun. Eagle hunters, they use those female eagles. They weigh about 26 pounds, 25 pounds, to hunt foxes and to hunt wolves. And it's an incredible story to view. It only happens in wintertime, not in summertime, because the fur is much better in winter. And this boy is wearing one of the fox furs that his eagle actually hunted. And this is like a situation where he turns into a man. It's the transferring into manhood when he has his first eagle hunt happening. Mongolia is a beautiful country. It's extremely different from anything else I've traveled in. And the areas are comparable to some of the Western states here in North America, except you don't have any fences and you don't have any roads. The hospitality in the places are incredible. This is the kitchen of a yurt. This lady is preparing wheat noodles, and that's basically all they eat. They buy wheat in big bags, they buy tea, and they eat sheep meat that they slaughter 1 sheep per week. The kids play with colorful rocks and with carved sheep bones. And at night, sometimes they watch TV, like they have satellite dishes, and they have solar panels on their yurts, and they can watch TV for half an hour. And when I was there, they were watching Dallas in Turkish language. And when you ask the kids what they were watching, they said, we are watching science fiction, which to me became pretty clear. The husband, the father, has a very important job. He takes care of the animals, slaughters them, but he doesn't milk them. He just watches out for them, and then he sits down with his neighbors talking politics or whatever else, while the wife is working like 12 hours a day. This little kid is playing with a musical instrument, and they're very fond of their music and their way of producing their own lyrics. This is the end of Mongolia. We will be continuing with a trip to Kyrgyzstan. And Kyrgyzstan is in the area north of Afghanistan, and it is a very interesting country in the Tian Shan Mountains, which are called the Heavenly Mountains. And we had the difficulty of that the horses there were not in the shape that we had hoped. So we had to curtail the trail from 400 miles to 225 miles. But we had inasmuch a great trail that it was beautiful countryside, and we went up to very high mountains. The people have to do with whatever they can manage. There is only one single veterinarian in Bishkek, in the main capital of Kyrgyzstan, and at least at that time. And so they do with whatever they can handle. This cow has broken its leg, and that's the way they had to fix it. We rode up to 12,000 feet, and up there was snow. And even though we tried to keep the distances lower so that the horses could recuperate once in a while, we had to ride till we hit the next yurt. And we were welcomed there with an incredible feast of fresh fruit and vegetables, and baked bread, jams, butter, and milk. And the milk is milked fresh every day. It turned into butter, but because there is no fridge, the butter will be sour the next day, and it's still being used, adding salt to it to spice up the tea that they're drinking. On the left, you have dried meat, and underneath there are a couple of chickens fenced in with that barbed wire. The families are very happy people, even though they have nothing. They will give you whatever they have. They give you food. They give you their own coats if they think that you are too cold for the night. And they're incredibly proud of their country. It's a beautiful area to travel in. And again, you travel from one yurt to the next, and you get served tea every time you approach one of those yurts. We also were able to watch one of those games that they play there. It's a dead goat that's being played with by two teams, and the purpose is to get that goat into a basket in the enemy's territory, in the other team's territory. And every time that happens, the visitors, the people that are watching the game, have to drink a little shot of vodka and eat some peppered and salted white bacon. Tian Shan Mountains are incredible, beautiful mountains. We had desert, we had those glaciers, and we are coming to the end of our trip at Sun Cool Lake. And passing by a village, we found this graveyard with houses for the deceased. This is our last night at Sun Cool Lake before we return back to Switzerland. The year after that, we studied some history of Switzerland, and we realized that in the 12th and 14th century, Alemannic people from what's called Germany today moved into an area where the blue arrow is pointing to in Wallis, Switzerland. And about 100 years after their first arrival, they had to start moving out of that valley for reasons of not inbreeding, and they had to start out moving to the north and to the south from there with all their belongings. The oldest son, who inherited basically 50% of his father's possessions, had to take all his cows, all his goats, all his sheep, and wander into the northern or southern areas to start a new home, a new life. These trails were very well used by different families that had to leave this valley. And so we decided to ride this trail from the most northern point to the southern point, from Austria down to France and Italy. This is where it started in Austria, and it was it looks like it's impossible, but it was an easy way to get through there. And if you imagine there is 200 sheep and there is cows actually going through this cliff, you know that there is a trail that will take you through this mountainside. We crossed into from Austria into Italy, and up in the mountains, there is no borders, there's no problem doing that. So it was very nice views and very interesting ways of meeting people. I have a new horse here. It's called the Karabakh. He is from Azerbaijan originally. And this is a mountain distance horse. And it is because I promised Flash, my Arabian, that after the Pyrenees, he didn't have to do any more 1,000 kilometer trails. So I got this one to do this with. The trail that these people used was not used very much anymore. So we had to do some climbing in trailless areas. And that meant we had to get off and climb up and have the horses lead up the way. We came into beautiful areas of farming, of farmers' fields. And again, all the fields that do have fences also have gates. And you can just open the gate and walk through it and get to the other side, go through the gate and keep on going. We had some very difficult areas too to cross. And I don't know how they got their cows and sheep down here, but we were looking at it for a long time before we decided to actually climb down, because that's what it looked like from the bottom. We managed to get down both horses without any injuries, but it was a very tricky descent. The vistas that we had, the areas that we went through after this descent was beautiful. We are in Wallis area now. We are in the area where they started out their trips. And the horses are now a team with us. We don't have to watch for them. They just follow us wherever we go. And I hope you can see the horse and the rider here in this field of rocks. We also had sea animals a lot. You know, this one, marmot. And but was just interesting to see in this situation here that I actually took a shot of somebody else that was in front of it, and this marmot just peeked up when I took the picture. Crossing into Italy again, beautiful lakes, beautiful vistas, and some of the oldest traveling routes. This is one of a 3,000-year-old trail that has been used by the Romans, and they actually built bridges across rivers that we still cross today, that are still existing. And these houses were used in wintertime to keep the horses inside, and the horses would trample a path through the snow so that the people could move their goods across this alpine mountain range from Italy to Switzerland. And this is like what we still ride on today. We have a lot of pasture area that's been given up. That means that the cows are not being brought up there anymore because the glaciers have vanished, and because of the difficulty of bringing the animals across mountain overpasses that where there is no more glacier, no more snow in summertime, the farmers have stopped doing that. So we have a lot of alpine territory that is overgrown with bushes, and just because the cows are not eating up there anymore, wilderness takes over again. On the other side right now, it means that we have excellent grass and feed for the horses, and we don't have to worry about them losing weight. The horses are capable of climbing down stuff that we never imagined they could. And with the Duplos, we have a great situation that they don't slide. Irons will slide on this flat rock. The Duplos are like boots on the ground. My Karabakh is 6-7 years old at this time, and he is an incredible horse. He can climb up mountains, he can climb up rocks, and he can go forever. He does not get tired. We had some difficulty up in this region in Wallis area because we were hit by a thunderstorm, and the terrain was extremely difficult. So we had to turn around and go back down in order to avoid lightning on 9,000 feet up here. But you can see what horses can handle, and but this is the limit to what we expect our horses to do. Now we're back in the United States, specifically actually Canada. After having all these mountain experiences in Europe, we decided that we wanted to go see the Rocky Mountains. And so we flew over to Canada and started riding a trail from McBride to Grand Cache and back in the Wilmore Wilderness, up all the way in the north, south of Prairie. Jolt, the friend of mine who took me on my very first ride from Budapest to Offenburg, joined me on this ride. And we had an incredible time crossing Blueberry Lake into British Columbia, and then having only like 30 minutes to learn how to do a diamond knot on the pack horse. We had some trial and errors to get the horses going, but finally managed somehow. And we had rented horses in BC and took them across to Grand Cache, where we stayed with Indian Adventure Trails and Curtis Hallock, which was a great, inspiring situation for us, him being a person that has been out in this wilderness for many, many years and a very experienced hunter and outfitter. We were able to return. We had to change one horse because the one horse had a nailing problem, an infection in the hoof, so we had to let him there. And we rode back from Grand Cache to McBride, having difficulties on the way. This horse was patiently waiting till we cut through the tree that had fallen on his neck. So they were incredible. They were it was the first time to me that I saw that horses can actually stand still, even though the situation is very uncomfortable for them. It was beautiful, but very, very tiring, very, very hard riding for us because the weather was not very good. And finding the trails that disappeared just in nothingness for once in a while was very difficult, specifically since we are used to European maps and not Canadian maps, which is quite a difference. We saw some bear tracks, but luckily no bears. And even though the mornings were beautiful and we had great vistas, great views of elk and deer, we never actually saw bear or even a wolf in this area. It was, to me, one of the hardest trails because Jack, the horse that we had with us, Fast Jack was his name, decided that he wouldn't carry me anymore, so I had to walk the last 3 days of the trail, and we managed to get out 10 o'clock at night while our bus was leaving 4 o'clock in the morning to catch the airplane in Prince George going back to Europe. But it was all worthwhile, with absolute the intent to come back to this area and experience it again. We flew down to Patagonia, to Argentina, and kept on riding down there for 3 months. We bought horses and rode up from the south to the very north of, or to the very center of Argentina. This is Fitzroy, the most famous mountain there in Argentina. It's like the Matterhorn in Switzerland. And there is incredible lakes that are bringing water in from glaciers, and they extend for weeks riding time into the Pampa. So it takes you 2 weeks to get around this lake, going back into the mountains. There is fences, but you just put them down and have the horses walk over them, and then you put them back up. And so it's no difficulty crossing people's property wherever you want. Meeting gauchos that are too old to ride, working in the kitchen so that they survive, have something to eat and roof over their head, and looking for water every single day. these are guacanas. They are like a camel animal, and they have a very weird voice, and you see them all over the place. Gauchos here are incredibly hospitable. This guy slaughtered a sheep and gave us his hind leg to take it with us for the next couple of days. We had a kind of little difficulty finding out how to transport it. Further north, it becomes more green and the area has more water. And it is absolute stunning countryside, but it can get cold. We had wintertime, we had a snow break in the middle of summer, basically, and you just stay in a puesto, in a little farmhouse, even though the gaucho is not there. You drink his tea, you make fire in his stove, and if he happens to come, he is very excited to see you, and if not, you just leave him a thank you note and keep on riding. We meet a lot of people on the trail, and every time we meet them, we have to have a meal with them, an asado, which they love to cook. This is an estancia, and sometimes it takes you like 30 miles to get from the fence to the center of the estancia and then to the home of the owner. This is one of the gauchos that we met on the trail, and he's like working 16 hours a day, starting at 3 o'clock in the morning, coming back at like 10, 11 o'clock at night, and then going to sleep for a couple hours before he heads out again. We're riding north, and we're meeting up with some friends from Switzerland that take us back to Bariloche. And these people that we met on the trail only had a little bit of flour and 1 can of tomato paste, yet they invited us in to their home to share that meal with them. So we ended up taking them to the next shop and buying food for them so that they could eat something and feed their baby. We met these cows on the road, these oxen that are pulling a wagon loaded with wood. And here we are riding with our friends from Switzerland up to Bariloche. Next trail is back in Switzerland again, and it is from another place of the Walser group in Brent in Austria, riding down through Germany into Italy again, and then riding down into Switzerland. The countryside there, it was September when we did that, is beautiful, but we had some really difficult terrain to cover. Here we are at the border of Italy and Switzerland. And again, here I have my second horse. He is also from the Caucasus mountain range. And we are riding across this border many, many times. This is Lago Sao Seo. It's one of the most beautiful lakes up in the mountains at this border area. And this is Bernina Pass. That's one overpass that you can drive over. On this trip, we had an accident, and we had the white horse here, the gray horse, flown out with a helicopter because he fell down on a metal grid bridge and he couldn't get back up. The only, and hopefully the only accident that we will have, but the only accident in 20 years of trail riding that we had.
So we're at about the hour mark, Peter, so maybe another 10 minutes or so, and then I can give you the questions or whatever you'd like there.
Great. Sounds good to me.
Okay. Well, if you want, I don't want to interrupt you totally, but yeah, if you got like 10 more minutes or so, and then
sure. If any questions are there, please ask, and I'll be glad to answer.
Okay, I have some questions that have come in. I'll put them in the chat, or I can ask them out loud, whatever you'd like.
Just ask them out loud.
Okay.
I can
No problem. All right. Our first question is, how do you pick the specific trail in each country that you do?
Basically by studying the mountains, the geology of the mountains and the fauna, finding out whether there's feed for the horses or not, and then trying to discern whether I find a trail there or not. And most of the time in Europe, there is several trails that you can pick from. In the United States, it becomes a little bit more difficult, but there is long distance trails here, like the Pacific Crest Trail or the Continental Divide Trail, which we also rode. So you just pick existing trails, like in Georgia, where we were just 2 years ago. The trails were like 30 years old and never been used again for 30 years. And now they're being used again because we made one when we crossed those Caucasus Mountains.
Wow. Okay. The next question is, how do you know if there will be enough grass or grazing where you're going?
If there is enough grass where we're going?
Yeah, how do you know if there will be enough?
Yeah, that's a good one. Sometimes you just keep on going until you find enough grass. And it has happened that, it was 10 o'clock at night when and it was pitch black when we decided that we were not going to find any grass for the horses. So we had to tie them up hungry on the trees and then start very early at the first break of light the next morning, keep going till we found grass. And we did find grass about 3 hours later in a dried up swamp area. And this is like difficult because the horses then are so hungry, they eat whatever they find in front of them. And we had a colic because of that. One of the horses ate something that he shouldn't have been eaten. But yeah, it only happened like once or twice in 20 years. Usually we do find on the Pyrenees trip, it was difficult because we had to change sides a lot from France into Spain, just to find grass for the horses for the night.
Oh, okay. Next question is, what time of year were you in Mongolia?
Mongolia is great for riding in June, July, and August. September, it becomes very cold, and before June, it's very cold also. So you want to be there in June, July, August. Those are the best times to go riding. We were there once in June when we went to the reindeer herders, and we went in August when we did the 4 weeks across the Chinese and Russian border.
Oh, okay. Next question is, what country has been the most difficult logistically to manage?
Logistically, the most difficult one is the United States. And the reason being is that we don't have a car or trailer. And riding without a car and trailer makes it extremely difficult once you hit populated areas. We had one city that we were told that the sheriff was going to kick us out of the village, of the city, because the horses weren't permitted to be in the village at night, and the distances are so big. People are telling me it's only a couple of miles, but it ends up being 8 miles, 10 miles, 12 miles. And once you've already done 20 or 30 miles, you're not really interested to do another 12 miles just to get the horses outside of town, So that's where it becomes difficult. And from that point on, we decided that we needed to have a trailer and a truck at hand, like being able to call them up to come and pick us up and take us somewhere. So that logistically, yeah, the United States has been the most difficult.
Okay. Next question is, how did you get your horses to learn to cross the refrigerator-sized rocks?
With a lot of patience. But it all starts out with the situation that you have to trust your horse. That you have to trust him, that he doesn't want to get hurt, he doesn't want to get killed. and he will try to do his best, and he will do his best. But then you have to be really patient and help him make the right decisions. Letting him pick the trail, let him pick the rock he wants to go on. And horses will do that. They will pick the right rock. But it might take you 5 minutes per step. And so therefore, if the area is too big, if it's bigger than 50 yards, we turn around and go somewhere else. But if it's only 50 yards, at that time, we had to, because we needed to get back so that we could get back to our jobs. Then you do it. And it took us 2 or 3 hours just to cross those 50 yards.
Wow. Okay. Next question. When you use local horses, do you swap them out along the way, or do you keep the same horses?
If any way possible, I try to keep the horse that I got and ride it the 500 to 800 miles that I want to ride it. Because once you get to trust a horse, you don't want to swap that horse to another one that you don't know. So it is very important that I try to keep that. Now, in Kazakhstan, that's not possible because horses cannot leave the region. And if you want to ride outside of the region that you got your first horse from, you have to switch horses. The same in Argentina. If you want to cross the Andes, the Chilean horses are not permitted to go to Argentina and vice versa.
Okay. Next question is, what happened to the horse that was injured? Did it recover?
We goldened it. We spent a lot of money on getting it back to health, and it's still going across the Alps today. So everything is fine again, but we spent a lot of money taking care of him.
That's good. That's good. Next question what are some key things to look for in coordinating a trip with an outfitter in a different country? Or how do you set up a self-supporting trip?
Well, that really depends on the country. It's usually what I do is I tell them that I'm a guide and I don't need a guide in the area. What I do need is a translator, and I need somebody that is willing to sell me his horses. And I always buy the horses, because then the value of the horse is defined. And if something happens to that horse, I don't have to haggle about the value of that horse afterwards. I also make sure that the person that sells the horse to me is willing to buy the horse back when I come back at a given price. And the difference is basically what he earns on giving me the horse. Like in Jasper, I have met an outfitter that trusted me with his best horse when we asked him for a horse that we had to replace one of our own with. And so I decided that I could trust him also. And therefore, we just talked a lot on the phone and agreed on what way we were going to deal with the different situations. And it works out. But you have to talk to the people, and I need translators to help me overcome the cultural differences. Google Translate will translate all the words, but it doesn't translate the cultural difference.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Next question. How do you plan your ride days and rest days? Is there a schedule you always follow, or do you judge by the horses?
Well, I go by the horses a lot, but with my own horses, I found that 2 half rest days a week are better than 1 total day off, because 1 total day off means that they're going to be stiff the day after, but 2 half days will give them enough rest. And we need the rest too, to do washing, to buy food, to work on the internet, whatever. And so 2 half days a week have been my choice.
Okay. Next question is, let's see. Do you use GPS on your trips or just hand maps?
No, absolutely GPS. The problem is, if you don't have a GPS, you're carrying a lot of weight in paper if you want to have detailed information about the trail. And doing 1,000 Ks or like 700 miles it would mean a lot of paper maps to carry along if you want detailed maps. So GPS is a must. I use Google Earth a lot, and I use AllTrails a lot to define the trail I want to do. And I've had enough experience to define the trail on my computer and look for difficult summits, for difficult overpasses, by reading up on other people's reports about them hiking across a certain area. And if I see a problem, like it says there is a metal ladder, or there is an iron bridge or something like that on a mountainside, then I go look for an alternative route all at the very beginning on the computer. And if I run into a problem there, I already have an alternative trail on my GPS to follow to circumvent the situation.
Okay. The next question is, what type of trips do you offer to customers, and what's the next trip?
Well, my personal next trip is in Chile. I'm flying down to Chile in 3 weeks, and I'm going to be riding down there for 3 weeks in the Cordilleras on a trail that the people down there have not ridden before. So I will see some new territory together with them. And the trips that I offer for the guests are, there is one trip here in Jasper-Banff National Park in September next year that we're doing with an outfitter from Jasper. And I do 4 different trails in Europe every summer. So there is 2 beginner trails, 2 trails where we have comfortable hotels every night and 3 meals a day. And then there is one trail where you have to bring your own fencing and your own equipment, your own clothing on the horse, which is like a 12-day trail. And then there is another one in the Dolomite Mountains where we do a trip including tents. So those are like 3 stages. It's the beginner's trail, then it's called the comfort trail, then the better rider trail, that's the riders that bring their own clothing on the horse, and the adventure trail like Jasper-Banff or Dolomite Trail.
Okay.
You can find those on the webpage extremetrail.ch, and in the future you will also have an English version on extremetrail.com, but that's not up yet.
Okay. I'm just typing that in the chat there so people can see. Okay.
Thank you.
And I will put this out on the website as well, and Facebook and everything with your sites and that site. The next question, let's see, I think we have 2 more. So you may have already covered this. How do you choose your horses in Mongolia? But you've said you barter and buy them from the locals, right? And do you have locals that you work with and know, or do you just figure it out when you get there?
Well, I do have friends in all these countries, and I call up on them to find me people that are willing to sell me horses.
Okay.
It's like, yeah, that's the way it works. You have to have personal connections, because otherwise you'll end up at a horse market, which is possible, but then you have no clue what kind of horse you're going to get and what price you're going to be paying and so on. So I'd rather depend on somebody trustworthy that a friend of mine recommends.
Okay. And then the last one is kind of like the one you just heard. Do you have a schedule of trips people can contact you about, or are all of your trips custom?
How do you mean custom?
Well, do they contact you and say, hey, we'd like to do a trip in South America, I don't know, pick one, or they pick a country, or I don't know.
Yeah, well, on the website you'll find, like, for instance, trips in Argentina. There is 2 types of different trips. There is trips that I do for my personal pleasure. Those trips are all visible on my site alpentrekking.com, but that's what I do just with friends. That's not a ride I take guests on. but there is rides. I do take guests on, and those are on the extreme trail side. And those are trails that everybody can handle, everybody can do.
Okay. And the last question, I guess it's just kind of a wrap-up thing. Any other favorite photos that you want to share, kind of as a wrap-up?
Well, there is a site in Flickr that you can look up all the different trail rides that I've done and all the pictures. And also in Alpentrekking, you have all the videos of the different rides I have done. So if you go into the long rides page of Alpentrekking, you will find all those videos, and you can look up those videos yourself.
Okay. I'll put that, so alpentrekking.com. It is .com. Okay. I have videos of all the rides under long rides. And then you said the Flickr, is Flickr under Alpentrekking as well?
There is a reference to Flickr
Okay.
on the website, alpentrekking.ch. On com, it's not yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Alpentrekking is com is the English version, ch is the German version.
Okay.
And but I can set it up the next couple of days. It's not a big deal. So that it also has it on Alpentrekking.com.
Okay, no problem. I can find the Flickr reference on the CH site as well and get it out there. Yeah, no rush or extra work on your part.
The different trails for 24 are not up yet, but they will be up in the next couple of days.
Okay, awesome. Well, I think that's all the questions that we have here, and we will get this information out. We also have the recording that you have. Obviously, we would love to listen to you for hours and hours and hours, but maybe we can set up an additional one to see more photos and more. I mean, I want to see all these trips over and over. This is so amazing. Thank you so much for your time and putting these together. Yes, we have some comments here. Thank you so much. It's so inspiring. So people are writing in here. Someone wrote in a language I don't understand. I assume that's German.
She says thank you for an interesting presentation.
Okay.
It's German.
Okay. That's good. I'm glad you can read it.
Hey, thanks everyone for watching, and thanks for letting me share this. And if you have any questions, I'm open to get emails and answer questions, no problem. My email is peter@gugten.com. Peter like my first name, and Gugten like my last name, .com. And you can write me if you have any plans for any rides and need information. Don't hesitate to call or write.
Thank you so much, Peter. We really appreciate it. And we'll send you the links and everything for this as well. Thank you. We'll
Great. Excellent. Thank you, and have a good night.
Thank you so much, Peter.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All right. I think that's it. All right. Thank you, everyone. And we'll end it from here. Let us know if you have any questions on the website or Facebook. Bye, guys.
Thank you, and see you.
All right. Thanks.